news. Now, Rishi Sunak is likely to face a series of legal challenges aimed at preventing his plans to water down net zero policies, or at least slow them down a little bit anyway. But despite being met with criticism over the move, the PM has shrugged off the naysayers, insisting that the UK will still hit its 2050 net zero target. Look, if you were seriously concerned about whether or not the Prime Minister is going to be held up in the courts by this, and whether or not you're still going to end up having to buy a new gas and boiler and all of this stuff, then you should probably have a little look, as I will go on to, about one of the individuals who's going to bring this court case against the government and his track record. But joining me now is Jim Dale, senior meteorologist at British Weather Service. Thank you very much, Jim. Look, should the government be challenged in the courts over net zero? What's the risk here?
The answer to the question is yeah. We've always got to look at what government puts out there. The science should lead the politics, not the other way around. In this case, the politics is leading the science, and so those that my screen's gone blank. I don't know whether you can see me. Can you hear me, Patrick?
I've got you. You're off to a flyer here, Jim.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, I'll continue. Yeah, the science should lead the politics, not the other way around. And on this day, I'll make it absolutely clear, this is a day that we haven't really focused on why all of this is happening in the first place. And it's to do with weather extremes, climate extremes, and what's gone in the last few years. And on this day, we've heard that heat deaths in England and Wales in 2022, 4,507 versus cold deaths, 1,214, as overtaken for the first time. So that's a clear direction of travel, and it is why the likes of the Good Law and Friends of the Earth are taking the steps that they probably will take to court.
I mean, the Good Law project loses almost everything that it does. Jolyon Moore also now sticking up for the environment despite clubbing a fox to death in his own back garden whilst wearing his wife's kimono a few years ago. So now he suddenly cares about the environment. But, I mean, if the government is saying that they're going to hit the net zero targets by 2050 anyway, we're just slowing down some of the costs of it, then what's the problem?
Well, the problem is it's going into reverse. This isn't, there is a certain urgency about us actually moving forward and negating some of the weather experiences, the weather catastrophes that are happening, just not necessarily in the UK, although that's happened enough over the last couple of years, but worldwide. We have to play a part in this. We can't be seen to be going backwards. And there is
why
enough
not, Jim? Sorry, well, Jim. Why can't we be seen to be going backwards? Do you care more about what Xi Jinping in China thinks than Doreen from Doncaster, who can't afford stuff?
Well, look, I think there's a big difference between the Doncaster lady and Xi Jinping in terms of their position.
Yeah, the Doreen in Doncaster votes in this country, Jim. She pays taxes over here. Xi Jinping doesn't.
Exactly, but look, if we want a future, Patrick, if we want a future in terms of where the world is going, and it's not going where we came from, back to the Industrial Revolution, it's going in the other direction. And if we want to be world leaders, then we have to take a stance. But it isn't just about the economy. Make this absolutely clear. I'm a meteorologist. I've been a meteorologist for 40 years. I understand and I've seen the data and I've seen how the weather has changed. And
so go on, Jim, use the data then to tell me about what Rishi Sunak announced a couple of days ago. How is that going to, in itself, affect the weather?
Because every time we put things forward in terms of negating climate change, it's a step in the right direction. Now, we don't know what those steps are going to be like in 5 years, 10 years or 15, but we have to be going in that simple direction forward so that we don't go into this reverse gear and all this absurd stuff about saying, we're going to ban the potential of not eating meat or too many people in a car or not. And this is just absolute rubbish. He's making a political stance, made this absolutely clear. He's making a political move. And I've got to say, to take it away from the far right, the Reform Party, in terms of what they're doing.
Jim, do you understand what you've just done there? So you've said that we're going into reverse, which is a lie. We're going out of fifth gear and into about third gear. OK, so that's what we're doing, and that's about affordability. And I tell you what, Jim, you would be amazed by your metric to see how many far-right people are out there. Go and have a walk around this country and see how many people are very sceptical about the pace of net zero, and what, you think they're all far-right, do you?
Well, I'm not saying all of them are, but certainly in terms of the responses we see and where the political parties stand, then that is predominantly the case.
What do you mean responses we see?
Sunak is moving to swallow up some of the 8% that the Reform Party have got, because that is one of their main party political points that they make about climate change and net zero, saying not zero. So that's the direction of travel. It's
50%. 50% of people, Jim, thought that what Rishi Sunak said was a good idea. About 32 to 34% thought it wasn't. So 50% of the people in this country you think are Nazis.
I think that, no, I'm not saying Nazis, they never use the word Nazis. Look, I've seen plenty of polls, and the main poll came out at the local elections when the nation voted, albeit 30-odd% of them, where those in favour of net zero moving in that direction were around the 60% mark. Those against it were around the 20% mark. The rest didn't know where they were. So that's the true definition of this. This will come out in the washing. But to go back to your first question, look, science has to lead in this case. It can't be a politician. The climate committee, the climate committee that looks oversees this, apparently getting a new chairman. That person cannot be a puppet of government. That person has to be independent and scrutinise what the government is actually saying and doing. So there's another thing that we'll be looking out for going forward.
OK, it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because you say they can't be a puppet of government, but presumably you're perfectly happy with Just Stop Oil donating to the Labour Party.
They will choose where they wish to donate. If they wish to donate to the Green Party,
that's all right. So if the Labour Party got in and they'd taken money from a climate group like Just Stop Oil, that's all right. That wouldn't make them a puppet of the climate.
The Labour Party and other parties will decide which direction of travel that they actually take. The Labour Party isn't a scientific body in its own right. I would hope that whether it be the Labour Party, the Tory Party, or any other party, that they take proper expert scientific advice. If they take that, they'll be steering in the right direction.
Just very finally then, Jim, so if we were to have a democratically elected government that wanted to introduce a policy that the polling shows is overwhelmingly favourable by the British public, you still think that should be held up by the courts?
I don't think we're going to see a referendum. That's the first thing to say. The last referendum, we'll look at the trouble that's brought.
You don't want a referendum, do you, Jim, though, to be fair?
No, I don't mind a referendum in terms of if there was, I'm confident. Let me put it this way. I'm very, very confident if there was a vote of net zero, that it would come out more or less in the favour of the poll that was taken at the local elections. OK, well, we'll have to agree to disagree. But, Jim, thank you very much. Jim Dale there, Senior Meteorologist at the British Weather Service.